Morning. Happy New Year. Good morning. At this time, I want to call the January 6th meeting of the Nash County Board of Commissioners to order. On behalf of the commissioners and the staff, I want to welcome you to the meeting. We begin our meetings with an invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. For the invocation, you're welcome to stand and join us, or you're welcome to have your own prayer, or you can use this time for a moment of silence. At this time, I'm going to call on Commissioner Freddie Howell to do the invocation, after which I will lead in the pledge. Commissioner Howell.
Thank you. Let us pray. Dear Lord, thank you for this day before us. Thank you for your grace, your love, and your mercy. Give us wisdom and guidance as we conduct the county's business today. We know that the wisdom and courage comes from you. We ask for your hand to be upon this business before us today, that we navigate the decisions and issues before us in a manner that admire you, that we serve the citizens of Nash County as they have entrusted us. We come before you today with thankfulness and give you the honor and the glory for making each of us in your own image. We thank you for the opportunity to gather here today and the freedom before us to conduct business of this county, and for the democratic society that we do not take those freedoms for granted. Protect everyone in their travels today. Watch over us this week in our daily activities, and help us be your light to those we meet along our daily paths. In Christ's name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Would you join us in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before I move to approval of the minutes, I have noticed on the agenda that the audit presentation is item number 17, and without objection from the board, I'd like to move that up to precede item number 6 on the agenda. Is there any objection? Hearing none, we would move that up. Next, we will approve the minutes. We have 2 sets of minutes this morning. And again, without objection, we'll approve both with one motion. Is there any objection? The minutes are December 2nd and December 16th. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
A motion by Commissioner Wilkins. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Leggett. Any discussion? Hearing none, the minutes are approved. Next on the agenda is public comments. No one has signed up for public comments this morning, so we will move to agenda item number 17, which is now agenda item number 6. It's a public hearing, conditional rezoning request, Nashville Dairy RV Park. I'll call on Planning Director Adam Tyson. Excuse me, sir.
Chairman.
Go ahead.
The audit presentation. We were going to put the audit presentation.
You're exactly correct. I just said that. So now we'll move to that audit presentation. Excuse me.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I don't think we voted on the minutes.
We didn't vote on the minutes. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, well, Madam Clerk, please feel free to speak up and let me know that, okay? All right. All right. Excuse me, I'm sorry for that. All in favor of approval of the minutes indicate by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, no. Minutes are approved. Now we'll move to the audit presentation and call on the Finance Director, Mary Hogan.
Good morning.
Thank you, Manager.
Good morning, Board, and Happy New Year to everyone. I'd like to introduce you to Mr. Alan Thompson. He's a partner with Thompson, Price, Scott, and Adams. He's here to present the results of our FY 23-24 audit. It covers the period from July 1 of 2023 to June 30, 2024.
Good morning and Happy New Year to you. You should have a copy of the presentation summary, which is the smaller book there in front of you. And if you'd be kind enough to flip over to page 1, I'm going to run through the results and highlight a few of the numbers as well. On page 1, under qualitative aspects of accounting practices, in those 3 paragraphs, it talks about accounting policies, accounting estimates, and disclosures in the financial statements, and we were good with all 3 of those. There were no difficulties encountered in performing the audit. And then on page 2, there were no uncorrected misstatements, no disagreements with management. Management did provide us with a representation letter dated December 11th. We're unaware that management consulted the outside accountants, auditors, etc. Under other findings or issues, I'll talk about one specific on a GASB 87, which is a lease issue. The other 4, there were 5 in total. The other 4 were related to Medicaid findings, none of which had question costs related to it, so no issue in terms of money with the county. It was a matter of documentation in some of the files. We contacted the DSS about that, or went through the rehearsal of that with each one, and they have responded, so I think we're good in terms of a response to the state on all of those. And they are detailed in the larger report as well, all 5 of them. But the 5th one I will talk about in just a second. On page 4, regarding the numbers itself or themselves, you can see total fund balance there in your general fund at $63,115,000. If you go back to 2020, it's $42,227,000. Let me back up and say something I probably should have said at the very beginning. So the main reason you do hire us as an outside accounting or audit firm is to issue an opinion on the financial statement as a whole. We issue an unmodified report, which is a quote-unquote good report, clean report, best report you can get. So unavailable fund balance there is $13.6 million. The available fund balance at $49.5. Restricted at $13.2, and then unassigned fund balance at $36.2. You can see total general fund expenditures, $123.5 million, and then fund balance available as a percentage at 40.07, and then fund balance unassigned as a percentage at 29.32%. Revenues over and under expenses before transfers is $804,000. Water sewer funds at $277,000 positive, and then solid waste had a positive of $283,000. The next 2 sections there, you see your enterprise and solid waste with net investment and capital assets in your water sewer at $20.8 million, restricted net position at $203,000, and then unrestricted net position at $2,052,000 with a total cash at $1,279,000. Solid waste and net investment in capital assets was $988,000. The unrestricted net position was $2,074,000. Total net position is $3,063,000, and total cash at $7,024,000. You see your property tax rates there for the 5 years unchanged, and then the collection percentage at 99.19%. So an excellent collection percentage. On top of page 5, you see your total property valuation and total levy amounts, as well as the breakdown of your general fund revenues with a total of $116.9 million, and a breakdown of your general fund expenditures of $116.1 million, and then the government-wide net position of $74.1 million, and a net position increase of $14.7 million. On page 6, you see in a bar chart there, total fund balance in blue, available in red, and unassigned in green. And then on the bottom of that page, you see analysis of fund balance available and unassigned there for the county in blue, group weighted average there in red, and unassigned fund balance in green. And then on page 7, you see your collection percentages, and then the counties with greater than $100 million in budget or at general fund expenditures, they're comparing it to. And then on page 8, this is why there's so much conversation around ad valorem taxes in almost every municipality or county. You can see that your total general fund revenues, they're in a pie chart, but of that, 52.47 is ad valorem taxes, which is why having a 99% collection percentage is a big deal. And then on the bottom, you see a breakdown of your general fund expenditures as well, with education, public safety, general government, and human services being the top 4 there. Now, The other finding that I was going to tell you about at the beginning, there was a budget violation in the tourism fund of $242,000. This doesn't necessarily mean you spent more than that, but under the new GASB 87 rules, where you have to basically capitalize long-term leases so that you're, if you have a lease that's longer than a year, you basically have to bring it into your balance sheet and then also show it as a debt while simultaneously showing it as an expenditure. It's really an accounting issue. It's not a cash in or cash out issue. So going forward, we've had a conversation. I don't think that's going to be an issue, but it's really strictly a paper transaction for your books and not a right to debt where there was money that went out over the budget, if you will. Having said that, not only on that issue, but any other thing that you'd like to discuss, I'm happy to take questions of you. Not just now, but if you take the report home and you read it, you got questions, give me a call at the office, and if I'm not there, ask for my cell number, and I'll get you an answer to your question.
Any questions from the board?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Davis?
I guess you know you went through that pretty darn quickly.
I did, yes, sir, and I'm sorry about that.
That's all right. I really want you to discuss just a little bit on page 4, the total fund balance, general fund at 63 million versus 53 million. And I'd like to have a little bit more explanation about that, simply because the general public sometimes think we have more fund balance than maybe what we should have, which is generally not the case. But there's got to be some underlying reason why it climbed $10 million in 1 year. I think I know what it is, but it would be much more appropriate to come from you if you could give us a brief explanation of why it is that much increase and the expectation that will more than likely settle out over a period of a year or two. But could you talk to us a little bit about that? And if you would like to follow up later, and I'll put you on the spot, I certainly understand that as well.
I might need to follow up a little bit to give you that. I could make some speculation right off the top of my head, but I'd rather not do that if I could, because then I give you an answer, and then I have to start doing the backstroke, and I don't swim very good backwards. So.
Understood. If you don't mind, then if you would follow back up.
I will, and I'll do it in writing as well,
with
sir.
staff, so we could get an explanation for that we could give the general public. And it's got something to do, again, with timing, I'm sure, simply because of the, well, I'm not going to try to explain it myself either. I don't swim backwards too well either. If we could move from that then to page 7,
Could I say this too, and I will get you an answer, and I apologize for interrupting. Page 6 on the bottom where you say, and the reason we put that page in there is how does it compare to group weighted average counties, and sometimes if you need a tighter group around what that group can be, we can get that tighter for you if you want us to do a little bit of research and say, hey, we want to compare against these counties as a percentage. Sure. Happy to do that too, sir.
Understood.
Again, sorry to interrupt.
That's okay. On page 7, I do not quite understand that graph. I know what it says it is, but could you give us a little bit more detail on that as it relates? You've taken and compared it to other counties as far as collection rate, but just quickly looking at it, it's not registering with me what it actually says.
Well, what we're trying to show is over that 5-year period on this chart, what the county's rate was, and obviously for all 5 years it was over 99%. For the counties over 100 million in 20 and 21, they struggled a little bit, being 97.6 and 98.1, and then they bumped up. The only thing I can really attribute that to, it might have had something to do with COVID, and it might have had a couple of large counties that had an issue there in their collections. But I'll double check that to make sure that 20 and 21 for those counties over 100 million are accurate.
Light bulb went off. I was reading it backwards. I thought it was flip-flopped. I see what you got now. Thank you, sir.
Okay, yes, sir.
Yep. And then my last little question is on TDA, which kind of falls under my personal venue, being the chair of that particular committee. When you talk about capital lease, the lease we have, of course, is for Travel and Tourism Office, which is down at Mill Village, and it's got to be that one because it's the only lease we have. But are you now saying that a lease over 1 year has to be a capital lease? And I'm used to a number much larger than that in the business world that I'm in. Is that for government or is that for all leases?
From a GAAP standpoint, it is for every business entity. It phased in from a financial reporting standpoint, governments and then businesses, but for governments, it falls under a group called GASB, which is our governing board, and then FASB for the private financial reporting, but that's what they're asking us to do. I would tend to agree with you 110% that it doesn't add a lot of value to the financial statements. In fact, I think it adds some confusion, but unfortunately, they didn't ask for my vote, so sorry.
But it is 1 year now.
It's greater than 1 year, yes, sir. There's a couple other things in the financial statements that keep getting added to that on your general fund, they really don't show up until you get to the government-wide net position, but on your water, sewer, and your solid waste, they do show up. There's something called SPITA, which subscription-based information technology assets, I think, which is basically the same thing. You buy some software that's a 5-year payment over time for that, and they force you to do the same thing they're forcing you to do with leases, which I think we both would agree that's probably not the way we traditionally have looked at that.
Right. Oh, it's certainly not the way we've looked at it. Might be glad I've kind of gotten out of the leasing business because that's going to affect how things are looked at moving forward in the private sector as well, of course. Thank you, sir. That's all my questions, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions? Hearing none, the recommendation is to accept the Nash County audit for fiscal year 2023-2024. Is there a motion?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Moved by Commissioner Davis. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Wilkins. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Opposed, no. Motion passes. We'll move back now, and I've renumbered, so it will be number 7 on the agenda now. Public hearing, conditional zoning request, Nashville Dairy RV Park. Call on the Planning Director, Adam Tyson, to make the presentation.
Good morning.
Good morning.
The subject property of this request is a 1.7 acre lot owned by Michael C. Strickland. As you can see on the aerial photograph and the zoning map on the screen, this property is located at the southwest corner of Valle Verde Road and Beckton Road. It has an address of 3611 Valle Verde Road. This property is between the towns of Nashville and Castelia, and is currently in the A1 zoning district as denoted by the light green color that covers the zoning map excerpt on the right. If you examine the aerial photograph, you can see that located on the subject property are or were a single-wide manufactured home, a storage shelter, a metal carport, and a chain link fence, all of which are intended to be removed from this lot prior to its redevelopment if they haven't been removed already. This rezoning request was submitted by the property owner to rezone the subject lot to A1CZ, agricultural conditional zone, specifically for the development of the proposed Nashville Dairy RV Park, which would include a total of 5 recreational vehicle or RV campsites. A private campground or RV park is a permitted recreational land use in the underlying A1 zoning district, but it does require the approval and establishment of a conditional zoning district by the Board of Commissioners following a public hearing process, which we're holding this morning to review the specifics of the proposed development. Because this is a conditional rezoning, there is the opportunity to attach reasonable site-specific development conditions with the consent of the applicant. The site plan that you see on the screen here has been submitted by Stocks Engineering. It depicts 5 RV campsites on the subject property. These would be accessed by one-way, 16-foot wide gravel drive that would be entered from Valle Verde Road up here and exited onto Beckton Road down here. The site does not have access to Nash County Public Water or Sewer Service, so it would utilize the existing on-site well and septic systems that are already located on the property for that previous home at the north end, with connections to be provided at each of the 5 individual campsites. The Unified Development Ordinance contains a list of required development standards that are specifically for private campgrounds and RV parks. I want to review this application's compliance with those requirements. Number 1, each individual campsite would have a total area of 2,660 square feet. That exceeds the ordinance's minimum requirement of 1,500 square feet each. Number 2, the site would include 1 vehicle parking space immediately adjacent to each individual campsite, and then there are 3 additional parking spaces toward the north end of the property, which meets the ordinance requirements. Both the access drive entrance and the exit are required to be paved from the curb line to at least 10 feet beyond the public road right-of-way line. Number 4, the site would include a 50-foot wide buffer yard between the RV park and the immediately adjacent properties to the west and south. So that would be along this western property line and this southern property line. On the western side, the applicant has proposed the planting of a vegetative screen consisting of trees and shrubs to meet the required screening and buffering requirements between this and the adjacent property. On the southern property line, you'll see from the aerial photograph that there is substantial vegetation on the adjacent property to the south. That vegetation will satisfy the screening requirements as long as it remains on that property. If it were to be removed in the future by that adjacent owner, the RV park owner and operator would be responsible at that time for providing screening, probably similar to what has been proposed along the western property line, in order to screen the facility from that direction as well. The applicant has designated 28.8% of the subject site as recreational common use area. You'll see that kind of striped in here. It's outside the individual campsites, but it's area that may be used for recreational purposes by the campers, and that greatly exceeds the minimum requirement of 8% of the overall lot that comes from the ordinance. As always, when we review rezoning, we're required by state law to consult our future land use map, which is part of our comprehensive land use plan. The green color here designates that property as residential agricultural area, and this request would be considered consistent with the recommendations of the plan because, number 1, the subject property has frontage along and direct access to Valle Verde Road and Beckton Road, both of which are state-maintained secondary roads. Number 2, the subject property is located at the intersection of these 2 roads, and that is compliant with the requirement that a non-residential rezoning should be within a quarter mile of an intersection of 2 secondary roads. Number 3, the closest existing land use to the subject site is non-residential in nature. That would be the Cooper's Chapel United Holiness Church located just to the west of the site here at 3673 Valle Verde Road. As you can see from the undeveloped agricultural lands around the property, it has significant spatial separation from other existing residences. And finally, the conditional nature of the rezoning request and the relatively small size of the subject property will effectively limit the development of the private campground and park to just those 5 individual campsites, which would be considered a context-appropriate scale. We also consider reasonableness and spot zoning. This request may be considered reasonable and in the public interest because the proposed small private campground RV park is not anticipated to generate objectionable noise, odors, or significant daily traffic, and it should be reasonably compatible with the rural nature of the surrounding area. The request would not be considered spot zoning because, again, as previously mentioned, the Unified Development Ordinance has already determined that a private campground RV park should be a permitted use in this A1 zoning district with this extra level and requirement of review for the establishment of this conditional zoning district. The Technical Review Committee considered this request back on November 27th and recommended approval, subject to the development conditions that are suggested in the staff report. The Planning Board considered this request on December 16th. Mr. Michael Miller of 4518 Beckton Road, that is the adjacent property owner to the south down here at the bottom of the screen. He addressed the board at that time in opposition to the request, citing concerns about the potential use of the campsites as low-income permanent residences, and asked the planning board to recommend denial. Both Kevin Varnell with Stocks Engineering, the site designer, and Mrs. Mary Strickland, the property owner and applicant, addressed the board at that time and explained that the small-scale facility was intended to accommodate professionals such as travel nurses, as well as families visiting the area to participate in travel sports or social events. The planning board voted unanimously to recommend approval of the request, subject to the development conditions that are suggested in the staff report. The board has two motions included in the staff report: a motion to approve the zoning map amendment and a motion to deny the zoning map amendment, both of which reference a statement of plan consistency and reasonableness. In the event that the board votes to approve the rezoning request, we would ask that you consider attaching the suggested development conditions that are found on page 8 of your agenda document. There are 12, and I do want to review those now. Number 1, the subject property would only be able to be developed for a private campground RV park and only in accordance with the approved site plan. Number 2, as a condition of the rezoning, no campsite shall be used as a permanent dwelling place for indefinite periods of time, and continuous occupancy extending beyond 3 months in any 12-month period would be presumed to be permanent occupancy, meaning that the county could take enforcement actions to have a camper removed from the property after that period of time. The owner or operator of the campground has agreed to maintain occupancy records for stays in duration of 1 month or longer in order to document compliance with that condition and to make those records available for inspection by the county upon request. Number 3, there will be no additions permanently attached to the recreational vehicles or campers, and no storage buildings shall be permitted on the individual campsites. Number 4, there shall be no development permitted within those 50-foot wide buffer zones to the western side and southern side of the property. And the vegetative screening that is depicted on the approved site plan will be planted, maintained, replaced, and supplemented as necessary to effectively screen the operation. Number 6 is a reminder that even though the existing vegetation to the south will effectively screen the operation for now, the park operator will be responsible for providing additional vegetation to screen the facility in the event that that may be removed by the adjacent property owner at some point in the future. Number 7, all exposed ground surfaces within the private campground or RV park that are not paved or graveled will be covered with vegetative growth, such as grass, in order to prevent soil erosion and to eliminate excess dust. Number 8, the entrance and exit of the graveled access drive shall each be paved from the curb line toward the interior to at least 10 feet beyond the public road right-of-way line. Number 9, per the requirements of the NCDOT based on their review of this site plan, there must be signage marking the northern end of the access drive at Valle Verde Road as entrance only, and marking the southern end of the access drive at Beckton Road as exit only. Number 10 outlines the additional permits and environmental approvals that would be required following an approval of this rezoning request. Number 11 notes that significant or substantial modifications or revisions to what we're reviewing this morning could require reapproval by the Planning Board and the Board of Commissioners. And then finally, as always with a conditional rezoning, this amendment will be invalid unless and until the petitioners consent in writing to all the development conditions that are ultimately attached in the event that it is approved. With that, I will pause and take any questions that the board has on the staff report thus far.
Any questions for staff?
I've got one question.
Okay.
Commissioner-elect?
Thank you. Do you know if these sites would be considered full service or full hookup?
They're going to have, each individual site will have electrical, water, they'll have electrical hookup, they'll have a water connection to the well that's on the property, and they are planned to have a septic connection to the existing septic system. But that is, of course, pending later approval by our Environmental Health Division if the zoning gets approved. But it would have all three services provided at each campsite.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Howell?
Yes, sir, thank you. Just curious, because this is new to me, and obviously I see a need for it throughout areas. Do we have these already in the county? And
We have one that is approved but not constructed. The only other campground that we have is in far western Nash County, which is a part of the Lake Royale development, but that's a little different in that that is like owner-occupied campgrounds, whereas this would be short-term rental. So we do have one that has been approved but has not been constructed, and then this would really be probably the first one to be constructed. Based on its small scale, it would move faster than the other one.
Any questions down here? Commissioner Belfield?
My question would be, would they have to meet all the stated conditions before they can start operating, so it's no specific time for them to meet all the conditions?
If they would have to meet all the conditions in order to operate. Once the rezoning is approved, there would not be a specific time within which they would have to start in order to keep their approval. So the board should keep that in mind, that if you give this approval today, the property owner may not start for another year. They may start in the next 2 months. It varies. This conditional rezoning would pass to a new landowner if the property were to be sold at some point in the future. But to your initial question, yes, in order to operate, they would have to meet all the requirements that are placed on them by the county through those conditions.
Other questions? I would note that this particular matter is in Commissioner Arrington's district. No other questions. We'll call for a motion to go into public hearing.
So moved.
So moved by Commissioner Wilkins, second.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Belfield. All in favor of that motion indicate by saying yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. We're now in public hearing. If there's anyone from the public wishing to speak, please come forward one at a time.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, good morning. Kevin Varnell with Stocks Engineering, representing the developer. I'll be happy to answer any technical questions you have about the site. The owner and future operator is also here, Mary Strickland, if you have any specific questions for her.
Any questions for Mr. Varnell?
All right, thank you.
Mr. Varnell. Anyone else wishing to speak? Please state your name for the record.
Good morning. I'm Mary Strickland. I own the property with my husband, Mike. I'm here if you have any questions for me.
Any questions for Ms. Strickland? Thank you, Ms. Strickland.
Thank you, sir.
Anyone else wishing to speak? Anyone else wishing to speak? Hearing none, is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Leggett. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Arrington. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Call staff back up.
I have nothing further to add.
Is there any discussion or questions for the staff? Hearing none, I'm going to restate the recommendation. The motion is to adopt a statement of plan consistency and reasonableness and to either approve or deny the zoning map amendment. Is there a motion?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I attended the planning board session, and I've spoken with Ms. Strickland, and I believe this request meet all recommendations, and the development conditions were very strict. So I move that we approve this, adopt a statement plan of consistency and reasonableness and the conditional rezoning request of CZ 241201 and to rezone the Pacific property to A1CZ for the development of the Nashville Dairy RV Park, subject to the development conditions.
You've heard the motion from Commissioner Arrington. Is there a second?
Second.
I heard Commissioner Wilkins first, I think. Is there any further discussion? All in favor indicate by saying yes.
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 Opposed, no. Motion carries. Move now to agenda item number 8, which was previously number 7. It's a public hearing on conditional rezoning request, Williams Grove subdivision, Phase 7. Planning Director Adam Tyson will present the request.
This request is focused on 3 adjacent undeveloped tracts of land. You see them within the red boundary on the aerial photograph and the zoning map that's on the screen before you. These are 3 properties that total approximately 39 acres. They're owned by the C.T. Williams Corporation. They're located between the south end of Ava Drive here and the north end of Juniper Road here. This is outside or northeast of Bailey in the Green Pond community. The property is the portion of a larger area that you can see in this yellow shading on the zoning map that was rezoned in April 2021 to RA20CU for the development of the Williams Grove subdivision. Since that time, 6 phases of that residential subdivision, including 176 new residential lots, have been developed and recorded. The Williams Grove subdivision is all along the southern side of the subject property, immediately adjacent to it. There was a previously approved sketch plan back in April of 2021 that included the undeveloped portion that we're looking at today of those 3 properties. This proposal depicted an extension of Juniper Road across a jurisdictional wetland and a riparian buffer, which is shaded in this area on the originally approved site plan or sketch plan. That was the way that the developer proposed at that time to reach this portion of the property that is otherwise isolated from the rest of the development by that riparian stream buffer and wetland, was to cross it. And of course, that would have involved the requisite permitting and approvals from the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. This rezoning request has been submitted by the property owner and developer to amend that design and to replace it with this proposed version that you have on the screen in front of you now. This alternative design would remove that crossing across the riparian stream buffer and wetland area in favor of a road connection to Ava Drive, which has now been constructed up to the property line of the subject property. Ava Drive is part of the adjoining Whitley Crossing Phase 3 subdivision. You can see these lots here that are a part of that subdivision, which has been constructed by a separate developer, but they were required to provide a stub road per the UDO requirements, and that stub road now goes up to the end of this property. So instead of crossing the stream and connecting to this from within the Williams Grove subdivision from the south, this new proposal is to connect from the north through this state soon-to-be or future-to-be state-maintained public road that extends out to Needham Road here. The developer of this adjacent subdivision to the north, Mr. Alex Ivy of Ace Needham LLC, has submitted the attached letter of support for this request. As a reminder, Ace Needham LLC will be responsible for maintaining Ava Drive to the north until it can be taken over by the DOT once it has the requisite number of homes developed on it. Ace Needham has submitted this letter of support for the request, which grants CT Williams Corporation permission to connect the new proposed Phase 7 to Ava Drive, even prior to its adoption into the state-maintained secondary road system, based on an agreement between these two developers. It also supports the current design that we're reviewing this morning. This alternative design, as you can see, depicts 24 new residential lots. These lots would be along the south side of a new public road, which is proposed for construction along the northern edge of the subject property. That is immediately adjacent to these other property owners to the north. This would, of course, minimize the potential environmental impacts to the jurisdictional wetland by orienting the backyards of these lots toward that environmentally sensitive area. The amended sketch plan also depicts about a 10-foot length of pavement across from Lot 12. Right in here, just a 10-foot patch of pavement that would serve as a stub road, and the developer argues that that would break up this block length. We have a limit from Ava Drive to the cul-de-sac. It should not be more than 1,200 feet without a stub road to provide a place to turn around and provide a potential future connection for development of adjacent property. This is probably a little more than double that, I would think, from one end to the other. And so the only thing breaking up that cul-de-sac length is this 10-foot patch of asphalt right here. You might recognize this request. This request was submitted for review by the Board of Commissioners back in November 2023, a little over a year ago. At that time, both the TRC and the Planning Board recommended denial of the request. On December 4, 2023, again a little over a year ago, and at the request of the applicant, the Board of Commissioners tabled consideration of the request. At the Board's following regular meeting in January 2024, and again, at the request of the applicant, the public hearing was postponed to an unspecified future meeting date, as long as the applicant brought it back prior to the end of the fiscal year in June 2024. Since the applicant did not request another hearing date, that request expired and has been replaced by this resubmitted request that you have before you this morning. The differences between this submittal and the one that came a little over a year ago are the inclusion of the letter of support from the adjacent developer, Ace Needham LLC, and the proposal of an access easement across a buffer strip right here that we will discuss in detail in just a moment. When we review the comprehensive land use plan, we see that this request would be consistent with the recommendation of the plan to generally discourage development impacting the designated water protection natural resource area, which is highlighted in blue here across the property, and that corresponds to the environmentally sensitive wetland and riparian stream buffer area. The request would not be considered spot zoning because we are not being asked to consider a change in the allowed residential density, the minimum dimensional lot requirements, or the land uses. This is only a change to the design of the subdivision that is being asked. So it would not be spot zoning because we're not changing the overall residential density or lot size requirements. The Technical Review Committee considered this request back on October the 3rd. And while in general, the TRC does support abandoning the Juniper Road wetland and riparian stream buffer crossing in favor of a connection from Ava Drive to the north, we think that that would be environmentally sensible and preferable to the previous design. The TRC also recommends denial of this particular design for a few reasons. Number one, there is a 10-foot wide buffer strip provided between the subject property and the immediately adjacent property owned by Peggy Perry to the north. This is a buffer strip that has been proposed in response to some complaints and some opposition from Ms. Perry over a year ago at the previous proposal of this design. It is to add 10 feet of additional space between her adjacent property and this property to be developed. If that buffer strip did not allow direct access to this property, it would be classified as a reserve strip, and it would be explicitly prohibited by our Unified Development Ordinance. And so in order to answer that, the developer has established a access easement that would cover that buffer strip that would allow the owner of that property now or in the future to connect to the public road if they so chose to do so. The TRC finds it unlikely that just that additional 10 feet will make a substantial difference to the adjacent property owner in terms of separation. And TRC also feels that having that buffer strip with the access easement is overly complicated and unnecessarily complicated, and would prefer to see that buffer strip removed between this property and the adjacent property. The TRC also found that the proposed stub road I mentioned earlier, which is the 10-foot long patch of asphalt to be located here, that would be an insufficient means to break up the block length, and the TRC is concerned that that could potentially be seen as an effort to subvert the intent of the requirement to limit maximum cul-de-sac lengths to no more than 1,200 foot without a stub road connection. And of course, again, that would be the length that is required between Ava Drive to the west and the end of the cul-de-sac to the east. Instead of this design, the TRC still recommends a previous earlier sketch plan design that the developer previously submitted. This was recommended previously for approval by the TRC and the Planning Board. You'll note that it still does away with the stream buffer and wetland crossing here at Juniper Road and still relies upon access from Ava Drive to the north. But in this design, it is actually the backyards of these lots that are oriented toward the adjacent properties toward the north, and the road is located further to the south. It does away with any kind of buffer strip that divides this from the adjacent properties. It also provides a more traditional stub road that is the entire length of a lot instead of the 10-foot area that we were talking about in the currently proposed design. So another alternative to providing a full stub road would be to just shorten the length of this cul-de-sac so that it meets and does not exceed the 1,200-foot limitation from Ava Drive. But the TRC prefers this design over the one that is currently on the table for your consideration today. The Nash County Planning Board met to consider this request back on December 16th. No members of the public addressed the board at that time with respect to this request. Mr. Cecil Williams Jr., the applicant and developer, addressed the board and argued that this proposal was a superior design based on his past experience. He pointed out that in his opinion, the Nash County's maximum cul-de-sac length limitation was too short. And he also made reference to the difficulty of constructing the road along the southern property line, which would be, along the southern boundary of these lots because of its proximity to this wetland riparian stream buffer. There is a motion in your package to either approve or deny the rezoning. Both motions reference a statement of plan consistency and reasonableness. In the motion to approve, you do have a list of development conditions. However, these are the same as the current development conditions that are attached to the property. So we're not changing the density, we would not be changing the conditions, we would only be changing the specifics of the approved subdivision layout and design. With that, I will pause and take any questions prior to the public hearing that the board has on this staff report.
Just for clarification before questions, we're considering the request before us and not any previous request.
Correct. The applicant's request this morning is for the board to rule on the version that is on the screen before you.
Thank you. Any questions for staff?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Davis, Commissioner Davis?
Mr. Tyson, I have some concern, having listened to the planning board meeting and listened to your presentation this morning. Are we getting too involved in the design side of a sketch plan as staff and planning board? It bothers me that we have, I'm sure, a registered engineer that has prepared this design that we're looking at here today, as well as the other one, and yet we're stating that we feel we being the county feels the other one is a superior design, but I just have some concern if we have the right or the position to make statements of that sort and to get involved in the design part of any subdivision or anything else that we do. I'd just like to hear the staff's comments on that question.
Sure. So if this was a subdivision proposal that was not attached to a rezoning, then all of this would be handled at the staff and planning board level. As the board will recall, a few years ago, you expressed that when there is a residential rezoning, you would prefer that to come to you instead of being a general rezoning where the subdivision details will be worked out later. You would prefer as a board for that to come as a conditional rezoning, meaning that you have the chance to review and weigh in on the subdivision design. And so that is what brings us here for review by the Board of Commissioners. It normally would not happen in a subdivision development process that is separate from a rezoning. But because the two are coupled together, based on the preferences of the board when handling residential development, it does require the Board of Commissioners to wade into the design debate. To your point, I would say that both the staff and the planning board have, I hope, clearly expressed their concerns, and we would ask that the board would uphold the denial that we have put forward. But it's the linking of this subdivision with the rezoning process that requires the Board of Commissioners to wade into this level of detail.
And I fully understand why it's here and the request the board initially made, just like you said, for us to see. But I feel like our position should be we either approve it or we should not approve it, and not get involved in what we like better or what we like less,
Sure.
Because I think we are at that point entering into design criteria that we may not should be in, but we may. That's just a concern of mine, and is why I asked the question this morning.
Right. I think that it would be fine for you, and I think what the applicant is asking is for you to approve or deny the request that's before you this morning, which is this third iteration of the site plan. The reason that the TRC remarks about the previous version being a better fit is oftentimes if we recommend a denial, we're expected to provide a solution to a developer or at least a recommendation. But I think the decision before you this morning is just to act on the version that you have before you on the screen.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions for staff? No questions? Okay, hearing none. Call for a motion to go into public hearing.
Move to go into public hearing?
Motion by Commissioner Leggett. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Belfield. Any discussion? All in favor indicate by saying yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. We're now in public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak, please step forward and state your name.
Nancy Westbreak. I have a couple questions on this proposal. First of all, what is the lot elevation? Because it seems as though a lot of these lots are pretty much into the stream or very close to it. So my question would be, is there a potential for flooding? Secondly, where on the lots is the proposed location of septic as far as the potential of leaching into the stream? And third, what sort of environmental impact study has been done concerning the proximity?
Thank you, Ms. Mr. Tyson, would you like to address those questions?
With regard to the first question, there is no state or FEMA identified floodplain area on this property. And so obviously you would assume that the area that is in the wetland and the riparian buffer will be wetter and less suitable for septic systems, but there is not an identified flood risk by FEMA or the state for this property based on the proximity of that stream. I would, like I said, I think the southern end of these lots will be a little wetter than the northern end, but it is not an identified floodplain area. We do not know the proposed location of the septic systems on these lots since we're still at the zoning and subdivision design stage. Prior to recording these lots, the applicant would either need to have the local county health department evaluate each individual lot for the issuance of a septic permit, or he would hire a private soil scientist to identify the viable septic sites on each one of these lots. If the soil conditions were not as favorable as has been forecasted by this plan, then the developer would end up with fewer lots because it is a requirement that they have a viable septic site on each individual lot. But we're simply not far enough along in the process to be able to point to where the individual septic systems will be on each lot. And then finally, as far as the environmental impact, in the state of North Carolina, most environmental regulations are under the purview of the state, and the county is prohibited from adopting more stringent or higher intensity environmental reviews. And so part of the reason that the developer is proposing the removal of this crossing is to not have to go through that intensive and sometimes expensive review process to make impacts directly to this environmentally sensitive area. So I can't say that there have been environmental impact reviews. Perhaps the applicant can speak to that in a little more detail. But the entire purpose of reconfiguring this is to have less impact on the environmentally sensitive areas that were previously going to be crossed by the road construction.
Thank you, Mr. Tyson. Anyone else wishing to speak in public hearing? Just state your name for the record when you come to the podium.
Hi, good morning. I'm Nayela McLaren, and I live on Shallow Creek Trail. We see the buffer line. We're looking at the buffer line. Our backyard is up against the buffer line. My concern is that adding additional homes would decrease the property value of this subdivision. And then also the environmental impact. Anyone knows that the buffer line really helps. I don't know how much they're going to take away. They're not going to get rid of it totally because it is expensive, but how is removing or even removing parts of this buffer line going to impact maybe the nearby watershed? I mean, I don't know where our water is coming from, but that should be affecting that area, that could affect it. There's also a noise issue already. I'm not saying there will be a noise issue for the construction, we understand that, but just removing part of the buffer or even adding more homes, there will be, I don't even know how our quality of life will be, I feel, diminished because more noise will be emitted from the other side. And just taking away the aesthetics and the greenery in that area, I don't know how it's going to add to the residents who are currently there or here. And I hate it to even call this a community. This is a subdivision with no, it was built with no, like, looking towards the future, or even, it was built without residents in mind. I feel like they built these 100-day homes. It's here, and now we have to just live with it. The noise issue, the aesthetics. It's not built for community. There's no walking areas. There is, and it's just not built for community. It's not built for lasting, like for us to desire to be there, stay there any, longer than 5 years or so. And and I just, this is the last point, that when we came into the community, we were scoping, and, when you buy a home, you're looking all over. And so we're driving from Raleigh to come out here and give this place a chance. Spoke to the land developer or the owner, and it was like all this vision, like, yeah, we're going to put a park here, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and nothingness now. It's absolutely nothingness. And so we have silly signs coming up with, they're putting signs up because people are, I believe that there's buyer's remorse, and people are coming in and they're like, my kids can't play, and they have silly signs like, watch the kids, they're in the street. Like, what road in life do you go in and you see, like, you have a sign that says, watch how kids are playing in the street? You just don't do that. So what I'm saying is, sorry, I'm rambling a little bit, but there is no, it seems like you're building up with no future or intention to meet the needs of the community. It's diminishing our property value. We came all the way out here for a different environment. I mean, like, and we're right on top of each other. And if they could build something where, of course, they're looking at the environmental impact, but also the quality of life for everyone, that would be, I think, that would be, anyway, that would be ideal. And I think Nash County, you guys should be able to advocate for us, at least for how to bring value to the current residents, if they can explain that to us. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Mr. Tyson, do you have any comments you want to make regarding those concerns? Some of them were very general, and I don't know that you could specifically address them.
I think the one that I can address the most was the concern about the watershed. And again, the whole purpose in general of this rezoning is to mitigate and reduce the potential impact on the riparian buffer and the stream buffer. So even though either design that we've talked about this morning would accomplish that. And so I don't think we're in danger of doing worse than the design that is on the table as the approved design today.
Thank you, Mr. Tyson. Anyone else wishing to speak? Just state your name for the record at the podium.
Hey, I'm Brian Skipper. I'm over on Shallow Creek. Just a real quick question for you, sir. So the buffering line there where the stream is, where the tree line is, that's not going to be impacted by the construction at all, correct?
Right. So
where you got your last residence on the right side, right there, on the far corner.
now, you could have buffer area or wetland area that would be part of a lot that, it could bleed onto the side yard or the backyard of a property, but that particular portion of that lot would not be developable unless they sought specific permission from the state and federal government.
So it wouldn't affect that tree line that's over in that proximity where that is, correct?
I can't say that the tree line necessarily lines up with the areas that have been identified as wetland and riparian buffer, so it's difficult for me to say that there won't be any trees cleared. But this design is intended to not impact the majority of that area where that buffer and wetland would be.
Yeah, there's like a stream there, and you've got a tree line there too. That was,
Right.
That was my only concern. So you don't feel like the stream or the front side where those trees are would be in jeopardy?
The front side being the south side
Yes,
down
sir.
here.
Yes, sir.
No, I don't, based on this plan, there's no proposed development in that area, so the front side should remain untouched.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Anyone else wishing to speak? Please state your name for the record.
Junior, we live at 6765 Jordan Road, Elm City. I guess I had a big presentation here, but only thing I will say is our main objective here was to seek a block length waiver. I realize that if this subdivision, if this particular design was put somewhere else and it had a capability of having a substreet, there's nothing wrong with the design, I'm told, except block length. And I have done everything we knew to do. We put Mr. Perry had a problem with, she didn't want any development even to not encroach, but to even come up to her property line. So we backed off 10 feet, and planning said that was a reserve strip. I had a attorney that specializes in planning issues to come up with some of these ideas, because I don't have sense enough to do it. And they said it was an illegal reserve strip. So then, everybody knew that the only reason we put the reserve strip there was trying to protect Ms. Perry and her concerns. So then we put the statement up there saying that there wasn't a reserve strip. It was the sole intent of the 10-foot strip was to allow Ms. Perry or her heirs to access the road at any time after we built the road, obviously, and got it turned over to the state. And in addition to that, we put in that 10-foot, I guess, in that easement, we put a stub. We put, I think it's 10 foot. And it's been going on here for a year, and we still don't know what the definition and the criteria of a stub street is. A long time ago, you built a stub street, and you formed it up, and you didn't pave it, you didn't do nothing, but it was there. Now we have evolved to the point that we're building stub streets, putting water lines in them, paving them, putting stone down, and the DOT's not going to accept them. They'd already said it in public meeting, that we'll not accept these substreets because there's no houses on them. They don't meet the criteria. And I've done everything I know to get the design of the street to the top and whatever. And I guess the TRC and whatever, this thing here is not working. So the Nash County UDO says on section 10.7.5 about block lengths that the stub streets can be no shorter than 400 and no longer than 1,200, except where, with the consent, I guess, of the planning board, asking the commissioners to give a waiver. And that's sort of where I've been at and been trying to get done. And at the planning board, we had one of the planning board members plainly said that he was not in favor of doing a waiver, block length waiver on any subdivision for any reason. And it appears that the commissioners agree with that. And it's my suggestion to the commissioners that if you're not going to use the UDO and the things that are in the UDO to help developers and help the county, this needs to be taken out. Just like this former board took out cluster building, they took out shared driveways. There's other things that this board has taken out of a UDO that were tools that could be used, and not this board, but the previous board decided it won't necessary, and they didn't want to have them in there. So I think this block length, that we can't figure out a way to increase this block length here, it shouldn't be punitive to me that I can't get a block length waiver. And it's not come up here today. And I can, one more further step, I wish this was here. We can't get this thing, won't run with it. I've got several examples of all right. I'll just lay this up here shortly. I don't know where y'all can read it. I think this was, I wish I could return my youthful eyes.
May 19th, 2014.
2014. This was some things that happened around the Tar River. This is, we're going to have to do it, so I apologize for this little episode here. This is out at Windchase. 2,564 feet on a block. This is out on Bend of the River Road, 2,889 feet on a block. This is out at on Bend of the River Road as well, 2,829 feet on a block. This is this one is exactly what my problem is. Exactly. This is Shamrock Road. This is a subdivision that the developer wanted to build a street, but he couldn't get the next door neighbor. I'm not even asking for nobody to help me pay for a road, but he wanted to build his road right on the line, but the adjoining property owner said, I'm not, he said, he asked him for help him a little bit on the road. He said, no, I'm not gonna pay nothing on the road. I don't want a road, don't need a road. He went, I was on the planning board when this happened. And planning staff recommended that he couldn't have his 5-foot buffer, whatever it was he had down through there, to protect his side of the road. He went and they made him put the road on the property line. Just like I voluntarily put my road on the property line. This guy was forced to put his on the property line, and these lots on the right-hand side here, before he hardly got the road satisfied to the county and the state qualifications, this guy's gonna come over here and put up for sale signs all up and down there. And he was about $8,000 more or less for his price on the lots than the guy on the left was. Anyway, that happened. This one is 2,271 feet block length. And I understand that we're probably going to get turned down today, but that's sort of where I'm at. And if you don't want block length, you don't want to do waivers, and don't want to, just take it out. Take it out, take it out. I got to answer any question anybody might have.
Any questions? Thank you, Mr. Williams.
Mr. Chairman, I do have
Yes,
one
sir.
question,
Go ahead.
Mr. Williams.
Mr. Davis.
Cecil, I do have one question for you. What is the primary reason that you have taken the road from where it was originally to put it along the property line?
I just, in my experience in building, we're getting down, this soils up here, are Ultraville, I believe, the good, real sandy soils. And then as you get down closer, you're going to be getting into some range soils that are, they're not wetlands, they don't have to be wetland soils, but they are difficult soils to work with. I mean, we got people on TRC that does soil work, and they don't see a problem with putting it down there. So if that's the way the board rolls, then we'll just see what we can do. But I put it up there so that the road would be up at the high side and the houses would be at the high side, and the lots water would drain off towards the back of the lot. And when I turn it around and put it down to the road at the bottom, the house is going to be at the bottom. It's going to be high at the back of the lot, and the water's going to come down around the house and still go the same way down the house and to the drainage that way. I'm sorry if I ramble, but that.
I see what you're saying, and I'm trying not to contradict my own self by getting into design, but are you not working against yourself on getting each lot approved for a septic field by doing it this way?
I think I probably am. I think that I'll probably end up losing lots, but it's just, I think I am. I think I'm probably working against myself on that one particular issue. So.
And you realize today the only thing this board can do is approve what's before us or deny what's before us. We can't go back to the other plan, as I understand.
No, I don't want to go back to the other plan. I want to vote on the block length. I guess we're talking about the block length and waiver is that a part of it, or just, if it ain't, I mean, you got to deny it.
I'm going to ask Mr. Tice to explain where we are on that, yes. But you've answered my question.
Yes, sir.
By moving the road and why.
And I'm prepared to take it either way. I'm good. Thank you,
sir.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. I think we made it very clear that we're voting on what's before us today. We're not voting on any other plans.
Yes.
But for staff purposes, did you note Mr. Williams' concerns?
Yes.
Okay, then I would request that they be looked at, and if there's any recommendations for change, then you bring that back to this board at the appropriate time. Thank you, Mr. Williams.
Mr. Chairman, more questions.
A little further down here now.
Yes, sir.
I just got a question, and I'm kind of with Mr. Davis, that I think you see you got to approve it tonight based on the way it is, but just to help on resolution on this for the future, the main concern here is the block length, correct? Is that's in the moving of the road, really the concern now is it's exceeding the county's allowance of 1,200 feet.
Right. I would say that the two main concerns are the buffer strip with the easement, which the TRC feels is overly complicated for what it adds in value to the project, and the block length. I do want to clarify, Mr. Williams referenced a waiver. It was my understanding that his position was that the 10-foot patch of asphalt here would qualify as a stub road, therefore it would not need a waiver, because that patch would break up the cul-de-sac length into segments that are less than 1,200 square feet. TRC and the planning board recommend that the board does not accept that patch as a stub road. But it is within the board's power to grant a waiver of the block length if you feel that this is a unique situation that warrants exceeding the block length. So I just wanted to mention that because of the talk about a waiver. But back to you, the two issues are the buffer and the block length.
So, and I'm new, so this may be completely off the possibilities here doing this, but it seems there's concern while we're putting the 10-foot buffer there to start with. So what if the road was extended down where it currently is, I guess, in Lot 4, which was a proposal originally, and put the road at the bottom where we have the most land available that's not in the stream area, and then you come back up where he's got a stub at Lot 12 and put a road up and turn it to the top? Is that a possibility? That would alleviate the 10-foot buffer there and you would be less than 1,200 feet, so you wouldn't need an exception or a waiver allowing to get his lots in.
I'm not sure if I'm following, but I know you said if we put the road along the southern property line, which is what this previous iteration did, and then it also provides a stub road that is a more traditional design than the 10-foot patch that's about the length of a lot.
So where that stub road is, if you move the road to the top from the right forward,
Like it was.
where it's in the stream,
Right.
that gets the water, that gets the road away from the water, which will make it more efficient to build and more protective for the environment. And it cuts up and it's not 1,200, exceeding 1,200 feet.
So
Is that a
almost like
possibility?
a Z design where
Pretty
you would
much,
come
yes, sir.
down at, right.
Is that something that's possible?
I think it's something that's possible. We would need a designer to draw it out and submit it for review, but that is an interesting proposal.
Then you not exceed the 1,200 feet. He would
And the
get the road to
connection
the top.
would be the stub road that would break up the
you
block length, right?
And you would do away with the 10-foot buffer, which wouldn't cause confusion. And it would give more protection to the environment for the water at the bottom.
Right. I think that may be a possibility. It's hard for me to evaluate it in a vacuum, but maybe the developer will take that into consideration if, in fact, this isn't approved this morning.
And again, we're dealing with what's before us today, so the concerns have been noted, and they're going to be considered by staff, and you'll come back with any recommendations. Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Davis.
Mr. Tyson, you know, with where he shows the road on what we're looking at today, he has given a stub street. Granted, the stub street's 10 foot long. Is the 10 foot in that buffer area, or is it the road 10 foot off the property line at that point?
So the reason that that 10-foot exists is only because the road pulls away from this property line in order to create the 10-foot buffer between it and the adjacent property. So at the eastern end, where the road is coming back to the property line, there's that 10 feet, and it only exists because of the existence of that buffer strip.
And the sole purpose of doing that was trying to satisfy an adjoining property owner?
That's my understanding. But it does, as a byproduct, create this 10-foot area that is being used as a stub road in this design.
Any other questions? Hearing none, is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Leggett, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Arrington. The matter before us is a motion to adopt a statement of planned consistency and reasonableness. I'm sorry, I didn't vote on that matter. All in favor of that motion indicate by saying yes.
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 Opposed, no. We're now out of public hearing. Any discussion from the board? Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. The matter before us is a motion to adopt a statement of planned consistency and reasonableness and to either approve or deny the zoning map amendment request. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Leggett.
I move that the Nash County Board of Commissioners adopt the statement of planned consistency and reasonableness below and deny the conditional rezoning request CZ 241001 to amend the sketch plan for Williams Grove subdivision as proposed by the applicant based on the recommendations of the Technical Review Committee and the Nash County Planning Board.
Mr. Attorney, is that adequate?
Yes.
All right, you've heard a motion from Commissioner Leggett. Is there a second?
Mr. Chairman, is that motion to deny?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Is there a second to that motion? I second that motion. Any further discussion? All in favor of that motion indicate by saying yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no.
No.
All right, let's do it by hand count. All in favor of that motion, raise your hand. All opposed, raise your hand. or it's 5-2 vote to deny. Is there another motion?
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion, and I didn't come prepared to make this motion, but it's a motion to include everything that is supposed to be included, including the plan of consistency and those comments that are included in there, to approve this request. And my reason for doing this is I just simply think in this case, the developer has tried everything he knows to try to get it approved. He has a piece of land here that he has the right to develop. And I think, based on what I heard at the planning board, as I stated previously, that we are somewhat getting too far into the design and the rights that any person has that owns a piece of land to develop it, as long as it meets all the standards. Property is already rezoned, so I would make the motion to approve what is here before us, which is the approval of the sketch plan.
The motion is to approve the rezoning request.
I'd like to make sure my motion is in the proper form.
Is the motion in proper form, Mr. Attorney?
Is your motion to approve the plan before the board?
Yes, sir.
And that would be subject to the consistency statement and the development conditions that are under the approval motion in the staff report.
Yes, sir.
Can you state it accordingly?
I'd like to have Mr. Tyson to state it accordingly, simply because I didn't come prepared to do that.
Sure.
And then I will agree with it.
I'll just read the motion that is in the staff report.
It's in the packet.
Yes.
And he's not proposing any changes to it, so it would be as
If you'd like
stated.
for me to read it, I can do that.
Yeah, that would be great if you could.
Let me find it.
It's on page 18 at the bottom.
Apologize. When you say 18, what page is it in the packet?
I believe it's 18 in the packet.
It's 42 of our agenda.
Oh,
Thank you.
you have a different packet than I do.
42. Page 42.
42.
Mr. Chairman, I have it as 31 on mine.
Would you like me to read the motion, Mr. Chairman?
I have it now,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate it. I would make a motion to approve the it says motion to approve the zoning map amendment. I move that Nash County Board of Commissioners adopt a statement of plan consistency and reasonableness below and approve the conditional rezoning request CZ 241001 to amend the sketch plan for the Williams Grove subdivision, Phase 7, as proposed by the applicant, subject to the following development conditions. And those are conditions 1 and 2, and then also to approve the development conditions, which are conditions 1 through 5.
You've heard the motion from Commissioner Leggett. Is there a second?
Second.
From Commissioner Davis.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Davis. Commissioner Belfield made the second. Any further discussion?
Clarification,
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I believe I heard Commissioner Davis say CZ 241001 instead of 201, so I just want a clarification.
Thank you.
Motion would include rezoning sketch plan approval covered under CZ 241001. Am I on the wrong place?
201 was the RV park.
That's the correct, you have the correct number. I think she might be looking at the RV park file number that we approved previously.
Any further discussion?
She's just trying to confuse me over here more than I am.
Any further discussion? All in favor indicate by saying yes.
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 Opposed, no.
No.
5-2. All right, we'll move now to what is item number 9 was in the packet as item number 8. Call on Emily Moore, Grants and Intergovernmental Relations Director, to present the request.
Good morning.
Morning.
Nash County intends to apply for the North Carolina Division of Parks and Recreation's Accessible Parks Grant. This is a grant to assist in the development of projects that meet the unique needs of persons living with disabilities or that enable them to participate in recreational and sporting activities. The maximum funding award amount is $500,000. We plan to apply for the maximum amount of funding for the Nash County Indoor Recreation Facility. Applications are due March 3rd, 2025. A local match of $100,000 would meet the required 20% match for the grant. So our recommendation is we are asking for you to approve the local match for the Accessible Parks Grant, if that grant were to be awarded.
You've heard the request. Is there any discussion from the board or questions? Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, I'll restate. Excuse me.
There are any specific locations?
Yes, so this would be for the Nash County Indoor Recreation Facility, what was the, or is the Fellowship Church over on
White Oak Road.
White Oak Road. That's the building that we're looking at.
All right.
Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, I'll restate the recommendation. Approve the local match for the Accessible Parks Grant. Is there a motion?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Moved by Commissioner Davis.
I'll
Is there a
second.
second? Commissioner Belfield. Any further discussion? All in favor indicate by saying yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Move to agenda item number 10. Call on.
I did have a side note. We do have a public meeting this evening for input on the Accessible Parks project, and that'll be at Nashville Elementary's gym from 5:30 to 7:30. So anybody in public within Nash County that wants to come give input, we will be there this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Moore. Call on Thomas Gillespie to present the 10-year Parks and Recreation Master Plan update.
Good morning.
Good morning.
You might tell us who you have with you, Mr.
Yes, so with me is Nate Halupka. Nate is the project consultant with McGill Associates. He will be presenting the 10-year master plan update that will include a comprehensive review and revision of the existing plan to address the current and future needs of the community. Once Nate has completed his presentation, our recommendation is to have the board adopt the 2025-2035 Comprehensive Parks and Recreation Master Plan. And at this time, I turn it over to Nate.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chairman Outlaw, Commissioners. Thank you for having us out this morning. It's been a very good process as we work through and look through all the opportunities that Nash County has, and it's to be excited about. I will say, before we jump into this, I actually used to run some of the grant programs that help fund parks across the state, and I applaud y'all for getting public input and doing plans like this because it does help with your funding whenever you're looking at that. So what I'm going to go over through this morning, you've since received the plan. I'm just going to hit some of the high points, and I welcome you to stop me if you have any questions as we go through this. But like I said, I'm going to briefly hit some of the high points of it. So first up, I want to talk about, we have a chance to do these plans in a number of communities across the kind of the southeast, and we kind of see that there's this trend that is going on across not only the southeast but also as the country as a whole, in that, you know, about 10, 15, 20 years ago, Parks and Recreation was largely seen as an expense that happened. You would put money into a Parks and Recreation budget and you're expected to get programs and facilities out of it. And that's about all the equation was. We're starting to see, and I'm going to share with you here in a couple minutes, that Parks and Recreation is actually starting to line up more towards an investment. Not in the sake that you're going to get direct funds back, but it's there, and it can also, it gives you the recreation programs and facilities that the community wants, but it's also something that also helps grow your community and attract visitors and residents as well. All right, so some of the research that kind of supports this is showing that parks and recreation facilities improve your property values. This has been long researched. There's some key research that's come out of Texas A&M that supported this. The other thing is that it helps with your economic development in the sense that it attracts businesses. Your parks aren't just there for community enjoyment. Whenever a business has the opportunity to choose where to locate, one of the things that it's going to look at is what the quality of life is so that your residents and the employees are attracted to that area to be employees of those companies. The other thing, and I don't really need to go into this a whole lot, is visitor spending. And Nash County has some facilities that are drawing people in. In particular, y'all have a strong sports tourism assets that are across the county. That's all to say that I want you to view, I'm going to use the word investment in your community a good bit as we go through this, and I'm going to go through it fairly quickly. But keep that in mind, that if I talk about investment, these are some of the research supports that bring that up. So what I want to do is, whenever we looked at your plan and we looked at your current operations, I want to draw out a couple highlights. So first up, your department has been expanding in some positive ways. You're expanding in the properties that you're helping maintain. So Glover Park became a facility that you assist with in 2000. In 2021, Miracle Park comes online, and you're also going through some expansions at Miracle Park right now. All those things are helping to serve the community. The other thing is, and if you look up on the right-hand side here, these are actually your program trends. I want you to see that not only those are positive, increasing program trends in both recreation for youth, but it's also for adult programs, and you're seeing massive spikes in the number of program participants. That points to a very healthy department. So hats off to y'all. That's very good, and we need to keep that in mind. The next thing up is, I want you to see that you're kind of on the lower end of actually funding a rec department. But the good thing is that y'all are making strong and steady steps towards improving those things. You'll see that you've actually jumped up. You're really close to being in line with your state competitors, and you're making moves towards national benchmark levels for your funding rates. These are all good things, and it's because those investments that are also having those knock-on benefits of being able to serve more program participants. The other thing is, whenever you look at these, it's not just a single year that we're looking at. You're building this quality of life. The assets that you have, the programs that you have, and the funds that you have set the trajectory of the county. And over time, your improvements, in particular with your funding resources that are going towards Parks and Recreation, are setting a better positive trend over the long run. And hopefully that's a trend that continues on. We certainly think that it will be. Now, what that does is, as you're investing in your community, it's improving your quality of life. You're attracting more businesses. Like I said, those investments are paying off in attracting more businesses. It's attracting visitors and residents, which in a long term puts you on a better trajectory to compete with other surrounding communities. Honestly, that's what's happening. They're looking at quality of life, and whenever they're deciding where to move or where to live in, and all of your investments into Parks and Recreation are helping to have a positive asset or a benefit on that. All those things are good, but just knowing that you're moving and getting better is not good enough. We need to know what your community actually wants. So we did this. We actually gathered public input in a number of ways as we were going through this update. One of which was a survey that was open to anybody that wanted to participate within the county. We had a strong support for this survey, and 528 respondents that accounted for about 1,200 people within the community that were taking the survey. We also had public input meetings that were held all geographically throughout the community to make sure that we're hitting different geographic areas and different population groups. We also held focus groups that were looking at different key assets and key needs within the community. And certainly we had the chance to talk with y'all as well. All those things help pull us together and help us understand the overarching need that you have for recreation in the community. So next up, what I want to do is I want to draw out just a couple small things, and I'm not going to go into great depth. So first up, one of the things that we asked the community was what do they think the Parks and Recreation investment level currently is. And it was around a 2, a little over a 2, which is a, hey, it's all right. The next question that we asked them is what it should be. And it moved up towards a 4, which is moving towards, they want you to start to invest and increase your spending a little bit more. I want you to take this as a positive thing, though. This is not a negative. Remember, our programs are getting better, your funding's getting better. What this is a community that recognizes that you're doing a good job in Parks and Recreation and want more. All right, so keep that in mind. We didn't see negative marks saying, hey, you're doing poorly and you need to get up to speed. This is actually you're doing well and you want more of it. So what do they actually want? So to draw out some of the key benefits or key things that the community expressed that they wanted is you don't have an indoor recreation center. So that was one of the key things that was drawn out of that. Aquatics came up, and I'll go through a little bit of benchmarking here in a bit and talk about aquatics, but they wanted trails, open space, and athletics. There's a lot of active recreation across the county, and there's not what is typically called passive. Those are open spaces, hiking trails, access to waterways. Those type of things really came out as things that were important, as well as the indoor recreation. So I'm not going to go through this in great depth, but I am going to explain to you a little bit about the benchmarking process that we went through, as well as what we went through whenever we look at your local level of service. So benchmarking is just basically how your facilities and your amenities stack up across other communities of comparable size across the whole country. All right, and whenever we do that, we see whether you're high or low within a facility and how you stack up benchmarking wise. You didn't do poorly, you did well. Now, what we do is layer on top of that is a layer of level of service, which means here's the benchmark level and telling you whether you're high or below in a particular area. But then we show next to it what the community wants. I'll give you an example. So let's say that benchmarking for crocheting is that you should have 2 crocheting programs, and I'm just making this up. 2 crocheting programs for your entire county. Well, if your community comes back and says, we don't have any interest in it, you don't need to go out and build that type of program or facility because there's not interest in it. So we're looking at the benchmark, but then we adjust on it based on it. So some of our key findings that we found from your benchmarking and level of service is that aquatics is something that your community wants. It is something that benchmarking levels would support, but your community, the program and your department right now are not just ready for that yet. You need to work towards that in the future. Some of the key things that you need to address in the short term we're seeing through benchmark and community input is indoor recreation facilities, trails and connectivity to your communities, outdoor recreation, and sports fields. Those are all things that are not only supported from the public, but also from benchmarking information. So where is it that we're looking at or recommending that some of these additions take place? First up is ideally you need not only an indoor recreation center, but you need one that is surrounded by what we call a district park, which is a larger park. It needs to be anchored ideally with an indoor recreation center. You also need to have, a district park is one of the largest parks that you could have, so that you have the ability to not only have indoor and active recreation, but also have access to nature and outdoors. And we think it needs to be centrally located so that community members from around the county have a central place to go to and actually recreate. Some of the other things that you need to think about are you have a great facility out at Miracle Park, but you're lacking some of the support facilities that would increase or enhance that site, such as facilities, shelters, lighting facilities, additional walkways, and those type of things that make the park more usable during more time. This is something else that also came through in the last study, and we also still think it comes through now, is that at some point in time, access to the Tar River is going to be important. We know that Rocky Mount has some of that access, but having connectivity for blueways across multiple jurisdictions is beneficial. So those are some of the key things, and eventually, and I'm not showing it here, but having more natural spaces and parks spread out across the county later into the 10 years is something that should be considered. And one of the last things, and I'm going to end on this and open it up for questions, is that there's this traditional mindset that sometimes happens, that the way that we get these capital ventures done or these investments done is 100% through grants. And I'm happy to see that that's not the case with y'all, that y'all are actually investing local capital and seeing that grants are actually leveraging those funds. So I want to applaud you on that. With that being said, this plan not only helps you out with that AP grant that we just talked about, it helps you out with the Parks and Recreation Trust Fund, as well as a number of other grants that we have listed up there. I did, like I said, hope to keep this brief. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have, and if I'm not able to answer them right away, I'll be happy to get you any additional information that you may like.
Any questions or comments from the board? Commissioner Belfield?
I believe you mentioned that having park that's really accessible to the total population in the county.
Right.
I was just thinking that you may have, in a situation that you come that you have more parks than we actually need. By saying that we need to have access to the total county. What's the radius, mileage rather, of distance for the total population from a park, a recreational park?
So that varies by the type of different park that you have, and you'll have to forgive me. I'd be happy to get you those radius after the presentation, after I pull it together. But in a general sense, as we go from a regional park, which is the largest, to a district, to a community, to a neighborhood, and down into a mini park, that radius shrinks. So if you think about it, a district park is going to handle a large radius. It's going to cover a number of communities across kind of the center part of the county. And as you get into the smaller parks, it's going to be more specific. So I'll give you an example. If we had a neighborhood park, let's use, actually I'd say Castilia is closer to a community park. Castilia's park that they have, that y'all partner with them, is able to serve virtually the whole community. Whereas a district park, what we're talking about in the central part, would be able to serve multiple different municipalities as well as county residents. Like I said, I'm happy to get you more specifics on what that radius is. You'll have to forgive me, I don't know it off the top of my head.
Commissioner Davis?
Sir, you mentioned it, and I certainly know this is true, that when we apply for any type grant, we have to have this plan updated, and we've probably done that for the main purpose of applying for these grants. What is the likelihood, if we were to come up with an idea in the future that doesn't show up as a priority in this 10-year plan, because 10 years is a long time, how much does it hurt us in receiving a grant if indeed we're doing something that's not called out to be a priority in this document we have here today?
It can be significant. This plan does help you a lot. I've sat through a number of funding meetings at the state level, and if you don't have significant planning and public involvement, you're not going to fare well. What I will say is that we've not only recommended, I've gone through one or two recommendations within here, but there's a lot more recommendations than whatever I went over right now, and they're pretty broad, and it also goes through the overall public need. So you're probably good with using that plan so long as you don't deviate away from what the public has expressed as what their need is, if that makes sense.
It does. Okay. Are these recommendations like the community center, I understand, is it ranked in such a manner that it's high enough that we would be frowned upon if we don't keep that as a high priority?
So what I will say is you have the flexibility, even though there's more or less a recommended capital improvement plan within the comp plan, you're not bound to doing them sequentially. It is a recommendation, and you can use them as you need. So you may go in and pull a recommendation that is supposed to happen in year 10, and you may do it in year 1. So long as it's meeting that public need in here, you're fine. The other thing is, and this is, I don't think this is by chance, that recommended district park is, to my understanding, pretty close to where some interest is in properties that y'all are looking at, and that's good because that's where need was expressed also. So I hope that answers your question.
It does. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Harrington?
Could you just
excuse me, could you discuss the indoor and passive recreation, the indoor specifics as to what might be best in our area?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So normally there's different facets of planning that go on. So this is the broadest level, it's the comprehensive plan that's looking at the overarching strategy. A second level strategy that would normally take place is to do a site-specific master plan that then entails, what happens within that particular facility, how does it need to be developed. So it wasn't really within this purview to recommend what would go into that indoor facility. Now, what this does do is it gives you the public input that says, hey, these are the type of programs that the community would like to see offered out of that. And Thomas and his team would be able to use that to help program that site, if that helps. There's a second level of planning that would take place to help move any indoor facility or other park level development.
Yeah, so we had to resurvey.
You would not have to resurvey. No, so you have the public input, and the public input that comes from this would help guide that. It's more the design element level that helps you line up to make sure that whatever is designed or modified aligns with what the community wants, if that helps.
Yes, but we got to know what the interest is as far as indoor activities are concerned.
Right, so there is information within this plan that talks about what type of programs the community would like to have specifically, and there's some pieces in here that talk about what type of indoor recreation needs to happen.
Okay.
All right.
Any questions or comments from this side?
Will we receive a copy of this email? Or?
My understanding is that you have the digital copy, but yes, you will get multiple copies of an actual paper copy of it.
Of this presentation right here?
If you would like, yes. I've actually given Thomas the copy of it, and we can get it printed out to you quickly if you need.
Okay.
Anything else? Anything down here? Just a couple of questions.
Sure.
We have a park, Miracle Park. Does that not qualify as a district park in a centralized location?
It is, so whenever we're looking at classifying different parks, we look at not only the acreage within it, but then what amenities are within it. Right now, Miracle Park is what we would consider a large community park. And just because it's not classified as a district park doesn't mean that it's not serving the entire community basis. When you would normally look at a district park, you're going to usually have some large passive spaces around it. And right now, a lot of what Miracle Park has is active recreation. It's got the ball fields, it's got a playground, you've got the additional development that's coming in. But there's not large tracks where people are going to go out and mountain bike or hike or those type of things you would normally see in a district park.
So is this recommendation to have another district park?
It would...
or expand on this park?
You would... We do talk about expanding at Miracle Park. It is a little bit further south, that is, than where the district park is recommended. So the recommendation that is coming out of this is that you would develop your second county-owned park, and then to be a district park and centrally located.
My final question, indoor activities. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? What does your study show we should have?
Sure. Like I said, I've only got a couple of these that are listed up here. Some typical things that you would look at would be things like basketball, indoor pickleball, volleyball games, cheer, those type of things are the athletic side. The other thing is that it's not just gym-based recreation. You need classroom spaces to do programs like art or environmental education or like yoga or karate classes, those type of things. I can't off the top of my head recall exactly what had come out, but I can absolutely reference for you if you give me time and tell you what was specifically those indoor type of recreation.
Well, I know your report was before the property acquisition of the church, but wouldn't the church provide for most of those activities in this space? that
Yes.
he's referring to?
Yes, a lot of the indoor can be met in that facility, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would second that I think, without going too far, that your efforts towards looking at that indoor recreation facility and also the assets that it has really does help move you a long way towards serving what the community has said that they needed. The fact that you're looking at doing it so quickly within doing this comprehensive plan is a really positive thing. We're barking up the right tree.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
The only other thing, you asked a very good question that hadn't dawned on me, but I do have a concern that the plan recommends we move away from Miracle Park as our community. I may not have it right. The largest park is which one?
If I can clarify, it's not that you're moving away from it. It's more that there's a need for additional assets. It may be, and oftentimes your community park, a lot of your active recreation is going to happen at Miracle. Having a second park should not detract from what's going out at Miracle. It's an expansion of operations.
But the concern is deeper than that in the way we have funded our parks. And the concentration was on that park being the county-wide park and the only county-wide park. So we probably need to keep that in mind moving forward and add those access, those activities, passive as you called, or whatever we need to do to continue to develop that to that kind of park is what our funding model has called for us to be doing, and I hope we would continue in that method.
There's enough flexibility that if you decide to expand what's going on at Miracle, and keep the sites that you're under consideration right now as a smaller site, that would not deter you from being able to use this plan to help you move forward.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions or comments?
Yeah.
Mr. Belfield, do you have anything? Thought I heard you. Okay. All right, I'm going to restate the recommendation. Appreciate the presentation.
You're welcome.
The recommendation is that we approve the local match for the Accessible Parks Grant.
Chairman,
Actually,
that was the previous item on the grant.
I'm really on it today, aren't I?
No, you're fine.
All right, the recommendation is to adopt the 2025-2035 Comprehensive Parks and Recreation Master Plan. Excuse me. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Wilkins, second by Commissioner Belfield. Any discussion? All in favor indicate by saying yes.
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 Opposed, no. Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
could we call for about a 10-minute recess, please, sir?
We've been requested to have a 10-minute recess. Be back at 11:10.
Thank you.
Sorry. Meeting back to order. Going to agenda item number 11, I'm calling on Marion Cascone, Tax Administrator, to present the information.
Morning, Commissioners, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
For our tax report, in keeping with the North Carolina General Statute 105-357, the tax collector will be providing a monthly report showing the amount of taxes collected and the efforts being made to collect the tax. This report is designed to keep the board current on activities in the tax collector's office, and it's for your information only. It doesn't require approval, but it is recommended that you accept the report, so it will be noted in the minutes.
Okay, without objection, we'll accept the report, and it'll be noted in the minutes. Ms. Cascone, you have item number 12, tax
Yes, sir.
refunds.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. This month, we do have some refunds. We request that you consider the approval of the refunds. They have been legitimatized through our office and vetted, and we request that you accept and consider approving them. Excuse me.
I think, did everybody get their copy of those refunds?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. Is there any questions for Ms. Cascone? Any questions for Ms. Cascone regarding the refunds? Hearing none, you have previously seen the tax refunds. Is there a motion to accept those refunds?
I make a motion to consider and approve the refunds.
Second. Motion by Ms. Leggett, second by Commissioner Arrington. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, they are accepted. Thank you, Ms. Cascone.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I have one, just, I guess, question, and it's simple. Do you have, off the top of your head, can you say how many foreclosures there have been in Nash County around concerning people not paying taxes or homes being foreclosed on?
Well, we currently have none at this point, but we are working on some. There are a few business personal property ones we're working on as well. We're working with the UNC School of Government to determine what actions we can take.
But not a huge number?
No, not at this point, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to back up because I'm a rabbit. I'm too fast. We need to go back to the previous item and vote on it. All in favor of that motion indicate by saying yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. Passes. All right, we'll move to item number 13. Thank you, Ms. Cascone. Call on Jonathan Boone, the Deputy County Manager, to make the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, fellow board members. The item we have before you today for your consideration is related to the Senior Center Expansion Project. As you're aware, Nash County has identified the need to provide additional square footage at the Nashville Senior Center for programming for our senior citizens. We've been engaged in a effort with Oakley Collier Architects for about the past 8 months, looking at alternatives for an expansion of that facility. And the recommended action today is to approve moving into phase 2 of that project, where we would begin the process of developing the design and construction documents for the attached concept plan that was in your agenda. We'll say over that 8-month period, we've engaged in quite a bit of efforts related to input from senior citizens that currently utilize the services at the senior center and with staff. I would say we've worked through about 8 to 10 different conceptual plans for that new square footage, and the concept plan you have in your agenda packet is the one that we have settled on. And really, a lot of that was focused on looking at the budget. When this project was initially conceptualized, a preliminary budget of about $2.5 million was set for that project. And again, we've been working through a number of iterations with Oakley Collier and with staff, and based on the input we heard from the senior citizens to arrive at the 7,310 square foot concept plan that you have in your packet. And I will, for those attending the meeting, I will share that right quick. So just to orient you a little bit, this is the existing building. It's about 9,000 square feet where we have programming for seniors here in the town of Nashville for Nash County residents. And this is the proposed addition, again, about 7,310 square feet, provides for additional area for exercise room, exercise equipment, an exercise room, billiards, which is a fairly popular program at the senior center, and also some additional meeting space that is much needed in the building. But again, a lot of our effort has been focused on how to right-size the project based on the budget we have available. Certainly, construction costs over the past few years have significantly increased, and we spent a lot of time trying to make sure we could build a project that fits within the budget. So the recommendation at this point is to move forward, again, phase 2 of the project for the 7,310 square foot addition shown. Now, we'll mention, you may recall, I believe Emily Moore had reported we had applied for and received a grant for some renovation to the existing building. So you may see some things in the existing 9,000 square feet a little bit different from what it is today. And that grant, which is $475,000, will be used for renovation to that facility, again, with an eye towards responding to some of the needs that were identified during our public input sessions. So with that said, I'll pause and ask and see if there's any questions that you may have for me.
Any questions? Commissioner Davis?
Jonathan, I do have some concern over this because it really doesn't line up with our last capital improvement plan and where we left it there. But are we getting any more parking in this scenario, or are we still no additional parking?
This is all focused on the building. It is very little in the way of site improvements. And the thought process there was, although we certainly feel like we could never have too much parking, as we build this addition, further gauge what our parking needs are. We have some underutilized parking to the north of the existing building, the gravel parking lot that we think can be reconfigured and capture some additional spaces. And it would leave room for future expansion of the parking lot if we identified the need to do so. But the budget we have for this current project is primarily focused on renovation to the existing building, construction of the new building, and some minor site improvements to accommodate that new square footage. But no, it does not provide for any additional parking around the existing or the proposed building.
At our last capital improvement meeting, which consists of myself, Mr. Arrington, and Commissioner Leggett, Commissioner Arrington and Commissioner Leggett, we left there to look at some alternative ways of completing this project. Could you tell us, because I really do not know what staff has done in the interim between that meeting and bringing this to us today in the form that it's in?
Correct. So I mentioned there have been 8 to 10 different iterations, and I will say we had one conceptual plan of about 9,300 square feet, as I recall. So certainly provided all the functional areas that you see on this concept plan and more. And a lot of time was spent around talking about that plan, some other plans that we had evaluated, and the project budget. There was some concern that we may need to look at another firm to help us move forward on this project, and to that end, I reached out to Charter Construction Services, formerly Dawson Construction Services, that we had used, the board may recall, on the Pet Connection Center, just because of the work they do in our area. And based on my discussions with them, specifically Scott Garner, that is the owner of Charter Construction Services, he felt like that we could build the 6,000 square foot option and maybe potentially a little bit larger square footage for the $2.5 million that we had originally budgeted. So based on my discussions with Mr. Garner, I followed back up with Oakley Collier, and that really what brings us to where we are today. I've had several conversations with Ann Collier, who's been the lead for Oakley Collier on this project, about this concept plan and others that we had reviewed in our budget of $2.5 million. And she felt comfortable, after conferring with her counterparts at Oakley Collier, that we could find a way to build the 7,310 square foot addition. And that could change some as we get into the design phase. This is a conceptual plan. But it would provide for these functional areas at roughly that square footage for the budget that we had established. And, she had also shared with me some other projects that Oklahoma Caller has been involved with, and I think you're familiar with some of those, where unit prices were north of what is in our preliminary budget here at $350 a square foot. But she felt like that we could value engineer the project as we get into design phase. And again, based on also my conversations with Mr. Garner, and stay within the county's original budget and meet the needs that staff and clients at the senior center say they want to see in the building that we have here in Nashville. So that's really what brings us to that point today. To your point, we did discuss this at the last Commissioners' Capital Projects Committee meeting. We certainly could take this back to the Commissioner Capital Projects Committee to make sure they are comfortable with the recommendation at the last meeting. I think only 2 of the board members were present. We certainly can do that. We'll remind you, however, and that's not to say we can't delay this to a future meeting, but this is one of about 5 projects that the county's identified for bank financing to move forward, and this has about a 16-week schedule to get all this work done, to get to the point that we have a set of plans and bid documents where we could actually get hard numbers on what it would take to build this project and complete the renovation. Then we need all those projects coming together about the same time in order to present our request to the local government commission, which we would need to have their approval before we could move forward. So that's really the reason why we have brought this forward on the agenda today. But if there's a desire to take that back to the Commissioners' Capital Projects Committee meeting, in effect, it would just result in about a 30-day delay to our process. We might could capture some of that in the budget, but worst case scenario would be about a 30-day delay.
Well, I know I'm the one that's always making a statement that it takes us too long in government to build things, so I got a problem with delaying it as well, because I'll be contradicting my own beliefs. The other 2 members of the committee, do y'all have any thoughts or any comments?
Yeah. Well, we had said that we were going to meet before.
Mr. Davis.
Yes, sir.
Are you done, Mr. Davis?
I am done.
All right, Mr. Aaron.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
I'm sorry. We had said we were going to meet before this meeting to discuss any staff recommendation, but we didn't have that meeting. So, and we had also discussed the urgency of getting this passed and done and approved so that the funding could go forward. So I'm comfortable with the staff recommendation.
All right, and to the other committee members, Ms. Leggett?
I just, for the public's benefit, parking was a concern discussed in our committee meeting, and we just want to make sure that that is addressed with the expansion of the senior center, that we don't build something that people can't access. So as long as we're looking to the future, I'm comfortable with the recommendations as well.
So I guess I'll reiterate, what we're proposing here will not preclude the development of any additional parking at the senior center, but it does not provide for the development of any new parking spaces other than we can look at how to more effectively utilize the gravel lot immediately north of the senior center to provide for some additional parking. But it does not preclude additional parking in the future, but that is not part of the project as currently proposed and budgeted.
Commissioner Howell?
Just to follow up with Ms. Leggett's comment about the parking, what's the current occupancy of the senior center? And what kind of increase are we looking at by doing the addition of 7,300 square feet?
The maximum occupancy of the senior center, honestly, I do not recall that number off the top of my head, but I want to say, and fortunately we have Ashley Winstead, our senior citizen center director here. I want to say your average use is maybe 100 or so senior citizens per day, and that's in a 9,000 square foot building. So again, we're looking to add 7,300 square foot here. I don't know that you could extrapolate that linearly. That would be a linear projection because this would provide some additional space for some existing programming. But Again, we're averaging a little over 100 senior citizens a day for 9,000 square feet. Now, that includes some staff spaces. We're not adding staff. So this is primarily, well, I guess we're adding three or four office spaces, but it's really relocating existing staff. We're not adding new employees, but there is new square footage, expanded square footage for some additional existing programming in the building. To project what those parking needs are, though, I think would be difficult to do at this point, but again, I think the luxury we have here is that this plan does not preclude the addition of parking if we see, once we actually have a better feel for what our needs are, we could respond to that need. That is a little bit more reactive than proactive, but it also allows us to right-size what we do based on utilization at the senior center. So it's a little bit of a chicken and the egg scenario, but again, it does not preclude us adding parking in the future.
That's
We
just my
proved that we
concern.
could do that. We've added parking across, north of the admin building, so, it wouldn't be as long a lead time on that, adding some additional parking spaces as it certainly would be building a building.
Well, and I'm new, but I guess my concern is our situation we run into at our administration building. You can never find a parking place here. Got a nice facility, but you struggle to find somewhere to park. And that's my concern. We build this facility and spend $3 million in that facility, and then the seniors can't get there. So that's a concern of mine. I'm all for building the center and place for the seniors, but kind of the basics, we need to have parking for them to get in the building or some type of situation. I'm not sure if it's further away, if that's beneficial, if they're senior and have disabilities as far as getting in and out, and just be closer further and further.
Right. So, I mean, very candidly, if we had more budget, we would probably go ahead and build some additional parking right now. But right now, with the funding we have, we're investing that money in the building itself, and then we would provide the additional parking at a later date based on utilization in the new building. And this project is, if the commissioners decide to move forward, we probably would not complete this project until sometime in 2020, late 26. So we're a year plus out. And, if during budget preparation this year, if we decide to allocate some more money for that purpose based on that concern, I think we have plenty of time to react to that. But at this point, it's how to most effectively use the funds that were originally set aside to meet the needs that we're hearing from the seniors and to hear from staff.
Just one more follow-up question. Are there issues with parking now?
I think you would probably be challenged to find anyone that works in this building or visits a senior center that would say we have all the parking that we need.
Okay, that's just my concern. Thank you, sir.
Any other questions? Commissioner Harrington?
Well, I'm going to just make one other comment, is that what we're looking at today is the expansion and renovation of the building. And I have confidence in our committee and the staff that we will work diligently to find adequate parking as this building is being constructed. So please be reassured that we are not neglecting or overlooking the parking. It's just that we need to get the building started.
Any other questions or discussion? All right, hearing none, I want to circle back to Commissioner Davis. Did you feel pretty good about this?
I do not want to delay this any longer, sir.
Yeah. All right, hearing that, no other discussion. I'm going to restate the recommendation from staff. Staff is recommending that the commissioners approve the attached proposal and authorize the county manager to execute a contract with Oakley Collier and Associates for same. Is there a motion?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
So moved by Commissioner Davis, second by Commissioner Wilkins. Any discussion? Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying yes.
Yes. Yes.
Opposed, no.
No.
No from Commissioner Howell. Motion passes. We'll move now to agenda item number 14, which is 13 in your package, and Mr. Boone stays at the podium to make this presentation.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Board may recall approving a contract with Busco Contractors back on December 2nd. for Phase 2, Contract 2 on the Northern Ash Water System Improvements Project. At that time, we presented the contract recommendation to the board in an effort to comply with the guidance we'd received regarding the encumbrance of ARPA funds, and those are ARPA funds that the county received for water and sewer system-related improvement projects. When that contract was awarded, the recommendation also included a recommendation that $402,124.13 be set aside for contingencies on the project, and a portion of those funds were coming from ARPA interest funds. So the funds we received, the county received those funds, and we've been working through the process of design on the project to the point of presenting the board the recommendation on December 2nd, but those funds have been there and interest has accrued on that deposit. So a portion of the interest that was accrued on those funds had been allocated to the Northern Ash Phase 2 Contract 2 project. Based on conversations with our finance staff, they felt like out of an abundance of caution, it would be appropriate for the county to incorporate those ARPA interest funds into the contract so that we had those funds encumbered before the end of the calendar year, 12/31/24. And the manager has signed the change order in order to do that, but what we're asking the board to do is effectively approve execution of that change order to encumber those funds in the contract with Busco so that we are in strict compliance with the guidance provided for ARPA funds that the county received. So what we're asking the board to do is to approve the change order, again, in the amount of $250,000, which accounts for the ARPA interest funds that were allocated to this project, and authorize the county manager to execute that change order on behalf of the county.
Any discussion or questions? Hearing none, I'll restate the motion or the recommendation. Staff is recommending that commissioners approve the attached change order and authorize the county manager to execute same. Is there a motion?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
So moved, Commissioner Wilkins. Is it second? Commissioner Arrington?
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. Motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Boone. We'll move now to item number 15, budget amendments. Call on Mary Hogan, Finance Director, to present the request.
Again, the first one we have is for senior services. This budget amendment is to reflect the final HCCBG grant funds for FY25, general purpose grants. No additional county dollars are needed. The next one is for cooperative extension. This budget amendment is to budget additional grant funds collected from the DeLeon Carter Foundation to support events and programs at the farmers market through June of 2025. There are no additional county funds for that amendment as well. Finance, this budget amendment is to appropriate fund balance to cover the salary of the new special projects position. And that's what I have for those.
Excuse me, Mary, can you go back to number 2? There was a second one for senior services for their general purpose grant for Bailey. I believe we did the one for HCCBG, number 1, number 2,
gotcha.
senior services.
Okay. Well, I don't have that.
Oh, I'm sorry, do I?
I might have a different.
That one?
This is for Bailey. That's
Right.
the one I read.
That's number 2. No,
This is the one I don't have. No, I don't have it. Thank you. I'll read this one. This is all I had. I started with that one.
oh, okay.
Thank you. I'm sorry about that. I don't know where this
So-
page is. I must be missing a page.
So have we got 4?
We do have 4 in total, yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
You want to just go back through them again so everybody's clear?
Yep. Happy to. The first one, that's the one I was
Okay.
missing. It's not come out of my printer correctly. I'm sorry about that. The following budget amendments are presented for the board's consideration. The senior services. This budget amendment is to reflect moving HCCBG grant funds amounts for the FY 24-25 budget from the general to the medical transportation and to increase medical transportation for additional funds from HCCBG. This budget amendment is also to add a new HCCBG grant account for the additional funds to Word Tabernacle. No additional county dollars are needed. That's number one. Number two is the second senior services budget amendment for the HCCB grant funds. That amounts to, for the FY25 general purpose grant. No additional county dollar amounts are needed for that one as well. Then the third one, again, is the budget amendment is to budget additional grant funds collected from the DeLeon Carter Foundation to support events and programs at the farmers market through June of 2025. And the final one is the finance one for to appropriate fund balance to cover the salary of the special projects position. And I'm sorry about my omission there.
No problem. You've heard the budget amendments request. Are we good doing these all together, or do you wish to break out any of them? Okay, hearing none, we'll have one motion to do all four. Is there a motion?
Move approval.
Commissioner Belfield, second.
Second.
Commissioner Leggett, motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor indicate by saying yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. Motion passes. Moving now to item number 16, which is 15 on your sheet, high-speed internet capital project, and Ms. Hogan will continue to present that.
This is a project ordinance amendment. The attached project ordinance amendment is submitted for approval for the Nash County high-speed internet project. The $1,391,462 that was originally set aside for Phase 4 from ARPA is being moved to the High-Speed Internet Project Fund. The High-Speed Internet Project Fund is for the purpose of providing certain broadband services to unserved and underserved areas of the county. Additionally, North Carolina Department of Information Technology awarded Nash County $58,665 for the Digital Champion Grant. This grant is to support digital literacy initiatives and will allow Nash County to implement a digital literacy program.
Any discussion or questions? Hearing none, I'll restate the recommendation. Approve the project budget ordinance amendment. Is there a motion?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Got a motion by Commissioner Davis. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Wilkins. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. Motion passes. Move to the next item, Ms. Hogan, DEQ grant wastewater and infrastructure project.
This is the new project ordinance. The attached project ordinance is submitted for approval for the Nash County Water Infrastructure Project. This project ordinance includes grant funding of $16,745,000 from the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality Division of Water Infrastructure. The expenditures are currently based on projected costs.
Any discussion or questions? Hearing none, I'll restate the recommendation. Approve capital project ordinance. Is there a motion?
So moved to approve the capital project ordinance.
Motion by Commissioner Leggett. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Belfield. Any further discussion or comments? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. Motion passes. We've already done the audit presentation, so now we'll move to what is now number 18, board appointments. Call on Tia Fuller, the Assistant County Manager.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So the first board that we will address here is the Tourism Development Authority, the TDA. Please consider Earlene Bailey's new appointment to the Tourism Development Authority. Her application is included in your packet for review. Earlene Bailey will complete Lisa Ferguson's unexpired term before starting her 3-year term on April 30th, 2025. She is eligible, willing, and recommended for appointment. If approved, her 3-year term will expire on April 30th, 2028. Should I continue
I
with?
think we should probably do these as we get to them, so let's take them one at a time, okay?
Sure.
All right. Is there questions or discussion about Ms. Bailey, the appointment to the TDA? Any
Chairman,
questions or discussion?
A little bit of
Mr. Davis.
explanation. Lisa Ferguson has served on the TDA for some time. She originally went on as a collector member and filled one of those required five slots that we have to have. If you recall, we approved another position a few months ago to work in travel and tourism. Ms. Ferguson got that job, and through consultation with Mike Gaynor, the attorney, it was determined that she could no longer serve in that board position because she would be voted on things that affected her being an employee. Therefore, that's the reason she has been replaced on this board, and Ms. Bailey is a collector member, so it keeps our collectors intact. And of course, at the appropriate time, I'd recommend approval of this appointment.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Is any other questions or discussion on Ms. Bailey's appointment? Hearing none, I've got a motion from Commissioner Davis for the appointment of Ms. Bailey. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Howell. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying yes.
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 Opposed, no. Ms. Bailey is appointed to the TDA board. Now go to your next TDA.
Thank you so much. Next, we have, please consider Nish Patel and Lauren Williams as two new appointments to the Tourism Development Authority. Their applications are included in your board packet for review. Mr. Patel and Ms. Williams will fill the two vacant positions, and if approved, their term will expire April 3rd, 2028. They are both eligible, willing, and recommended for appointment.
Any questions or discussion on these two appointments?
Again, just a little bit of explanation. Mr. Patel is in the family that owns several of the hotels in Nash County. Therefore, he would be a collector member as well. You may note that he does live in Raleigh, but the revision to the general statute allows a member on the TDA board as a collector member not to have to reside in Nash County, and quite frankly, a lot of the people that own these hotels or members that work there do not reside, and so we've kind of taken that, and just due to the investment that his family has here, I think he would make a great member on that, and would suggest we approve that as well. And, Mr. Chairman, are you going to do the other two together, or are we doing them separate again?
We're going to do these two together.
Okay.
Ms. Williams and Patel.
Okay, and Lauren Williams is a resident of Nash County. Her family has recently bought the Gateway Center out at the intersection of Winston Avenue and Curtis Ellis Drive. They are the family that have opened up and are running the Lily Ann's Steakhouse. Therefore, she would be a tourism-related member and fill a slot that is required for that as well. So all three of these slots are really required in the statute to be certain number that we have to fill, and we've worked to try to get all of those members correct, and this would help us do that. And at the appropriate time, I would recommend approval for these two.
Any further discussion or questions?
Mr. Chairman, I just have a
Ms.
question
Wilkins.
of Commissioner Davis. Is Mr. Patel the only one that is not in Nash County, or are there others on the TDA that do not reside in Nash County that you know of? I was looking at the applications the other night and doing my due diligence, and he sounds like he would be an excellent person to sit on the board, but I was just wondering how many out of town, or those that don't live in Nash or close by counties, are on the TDA?
Mr. Wilkins, I would say that would be the only one, with the exception of potentially Misty Lee, and I honestly don't know where, I don't recall where she resides, but all the rest of them do live in Nash County, with that one exception possibly.
And how many are on the TDA board?
15 members.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, Commissioner Davis has made the motion to appoint Nish Patel and Lauren Williams to the TDA board. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Leggett. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying yes.
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 Opposed, no. Nish Patel and Lauren Williams are appointed to the TDA. Next item.
Thank you,
Ms.
sir.
Fuller.
Next, we have the Consolidated Human Services Board. Please consider Wanda Lamb and Ricky Crumps. Are you okay to do
We're going
these
to take
together?
these two together by,
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Please consider Wanda Lamb and Ricky Crumps new appointments to the Consolidated Human Services Board. The board met on December 12th and approved these two nominees. Wanda Lamb is recommended to serve as the nurse member replacing Sarah Thurman, and Ricky Crump is recommended to serve as a public member. Both are eligible, willing, and recommended for appointment. If approved, their 4-year terms will end on April 30th, 2029.
any discussion or questions about these appointments? Anyone wish to make any comments regarding Ms. Lamb? Well, I'm going to speak on Mr. Crump's behalf. He's in my district. He's a very community-minded individual. He approached me seeking to get involved in county affairs. I think his appointment has been vetted by HHS, as I assume Ms. Lamb's was, and I would highly recommend him for this appointment. Any other discussion or comments? Hearing none, is there a motion to appoint Wanda Lamb and Ricky Crump to the HHS Board?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Wilkins. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Howell. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying yes.
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 Opposed, no. Ms. Lamb and Mr. Crump are appointed to the HHS Board, Consolidated Board.
Thank
Next
you,
item, Ms.
Commissioners.
Fuller.
Next, the Town of Nashville Board of Adjustment. This board is requested to reappoint Mr. Dennis Evans as ETJ member of the Town of Nashville Board of Adjustment. It is also requested that the Board of Commissioners appoint someone from the ETJ area of Nashville as an alternate member.
Okay, I'm going to take those two separately, because I think we want to talk about the second.
Yes, sir.
All right, the first one is the appointment or reappointment of Dennis Evans. Any discussion or comments on that? Hearing none, is there a motion to appoint Mr. Evans to the Nashville BOA?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Leggett. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Howell.
Thank
Any
you.
further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. Those two appointments have been made. The next item is the Nashville BOA, and I think you just mentioned they're asking that a board member in the district, ask a board member in the district to assist with the recommendation. So I assume with that would probably be you, Ms. Leggett, but anyone can make a recommendation for this appointment. But maybe by our next meeting, not necessarily this month, but in February, we could have a recommendation for that. Would that meet the need, or do they need it sooner? We've got a meeting.
No, that'll be great. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you both.
We've got one more item, the voluntary ag district.
Yes. So we have two new appointments for that. Please consider the new appointments of Joseph Scott Bissett and Donald Scott Rogers to the Voluntary Ag District, or the Ag Advisory Board. Their applications are attached for your review. Both Mr. Bissett and Mr. Rogers are eligible, willing, and recommended for appointment. If approved, their 3-year terms will expire on 12/31/2027.
Any discussion or comment on these recommendations?
How many
Commissioner Belfield?
members? Yeah, how many members constitute that for that board?
I think they're still working to build. I would have to get back to you on that. They still have several vacancies on that board.
The reason I was asking, I was just wondering, did those two appointments complete the number to serve on that board?
No, I still think they have vacancies,
Okay.
but I'll get back to you to verify.
And also Health and Human Services, it completely full?
No, sir, there are
I
still
know
vacancies.
we've been, ever since we've reorganized, there's always been a vacancy on there, but hard to find someone with what that position called for to fill it, like doctors, nurses,
Yes,
or
sir.
whatever.
They're very specific about the board members on that.
Okay.
And I can send an email
Right.
to the commissioners
Yeah.
at the end of this meeting.
Let us know
Yes, sir.
how many vacancies you have on those two boards.
Okay, I'll do that.
Any other discussion or comments? Hearing none, is there a motion to appoint Joseph Scott Bissett and Donald Scott Rogers to the Voluntary Ag District Board?
I make that motion.
Second.
Chairman.
Motion by Commissioner Wilkins, second by Commissioner Howell. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. Motion passes. Those two appointments are made. Thank you, Ms. Fuller.
That's all I have. Thank you.
We'll move now to Commissioner comments, which is item number 19 on the agenda. Any commissioner got any comments that are pertinent value they want to offer to the board today? And please speak. Commissioner Belfield?
The only comment I have, I wish we could have gotten the annual report before we got to the meeting, and maybe we could have reviewed it, and maybe had a better understanding, or maybe had more questions about the annual report. Recommendations for improvement, or recommendations that would be in the best interest of the finances of Nash County.
You did get some information in your packet. You didn't get the large packet, but you got the smaller packet.
Yeah.
So are you asking for the larger packet as well in the future?
Well, the smaller package is a summary, either one or the other.
Okay, well, you should have received the smaller packet. It's in your iPad.
Yeah.
Any other commissioner comments?
Only thing I would give, Mr. Chairman, is an update on the permitting. The month of December, as it always is, was a little slower than most of the other months in the calendar year. There were 25 stick-built home permits issued, and there were 8 modular home permits issued, for a total of 33 new home permits, and they were, again, by a large number of different builders, which is good, and were scattered again throughout the county. And the commercial permits were certainly down. They were just a little over $400,000 for the month, for those that might be interested in those numbers. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis. Any other commissioner comments? Hearing none, we'll move now to manager's report.
Thank you. This month, we will be scheduling meetings with the towns and our city mayors, and I will be reaching out to board members. We are going to have those in small group meetings per district, and so I'll be reaching out to board members as well as mayors to get those scheduled. As requested, we've put together a public safety committee, and their first meeting is scheduled for January the 14th. The board will be updated on the committee's work, just as you are with the work of other committees at second meetings of the month. And beginning this month, several members of county leadership will participate in AI training being offered through the Upper Coastal Plain Council of Governments. The training provides local government officials in the region with specialized training on the Gov AI platform developed specifically for government sector use. This is a pilot project where member governments can participate at no cost. Once the first cohort has completed training with the Council of Governments, they will host a second cohort likely to begin in the latter part of March. This AI Academy will teach prompt engineering, advanced prompts, data analysis and image generation, responsible AI, and governance, and provide helpful AI tools. In regards to the fiscal year 26 budget development, the application for outside agency funding is ready and available on the county's website, and it has been sent directly to our current funded agencies. This month on our budget calendar, We'll be collecting a lot of data from our departments. I'll be reaching out to board members to schedule some small group sessions the last week of the month of January. These sessions will be to hear from board members about priority areas, concerns, and just have some pre-budget discussions. This is a reminder that our second meeting in January is Tuesday, January the 21st, and we're meeting at 1 p.m. for a group photo. Our presentations for this meeting will be from Melissa Corso, the director at Braswell Memorial Public Library, and Emily Moore, internal presentation from Emily Moore on our grants. The Rocky Mount Area Chamber of Commerce, along with the North Carolina Cooperative Extension Service, is hosting an agriculture forum January the 29th at Nash Community College from 8 a.m. until 12 p.m. The breakout sessions will focus on farmland preservation, field crop, and livestock. This is free admission. There will be a 50-50 raffle to help farmers in western North Carolina, and participants are encouraged to bring cash for that. There is not a cost to attend, but there is a registration. So if board members are interested in attending that, again, on January the 29th from 8 to noon, please reach out to our clerk so that we can get you registered. And we have an annual management team retreat that's being scheduled for the end of this month on Thursday and Friday, January 30th and 31st. Just maybe want to mark your calendars. Management team will be out of place on those 2 days, and we will be using, well, actually, I'm not sure exactly what training space we'll be utilizing because we have a couple of options at this point, but just please note that at the end of the month on the 30th and 31st, management team will be participating in our management team annual retreat. And I did also want to mention that for the commemorative courtyard, annually we take applications for the commemorative courtyard from January 1 until March 30th, and so that window has opened and we are accepting applications for the commemorative courtyard. And that's all I have.
Any questions for the manager? Any questions? Okay, hearing none. Now I'm going to call for a motion to go into closed session for economic development, attorney-client privilege, and matters of personnel. I don't think we'll have any action coming out to you, Attorney, Mr. Attorney. All right, is there a motion now to go into closed session?
Mr. Chairman, was there no, oh, never mind.
Motion made, Mr. Chairman.
Got a motion by Commissioner Davis. Is there a second? Commissioner Howell. All in favor of that indicate by saying yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. We're now in closed session.